Alright, hi guys, welcome back to the Knitting Expat Podcast channel. Today we are going to be talking about all of the DIY room decor items that I made for my daughter Layla's room. Hi, my name's Mina. I think I forgot to say that at the beginning. Anyway, when we moved into our house a few months ago, I asked Layla what she wanted, how she wanted her room decorated, and she selected a rainbow theme, which I was more than happy to oblige. So in her room, she has two built-in wardrobes against one wall, and in between is where there used to be a fireplace back in the days. This was a Victorian house that we're in, and so bedrooms would have had fireplaces before there was central heating. Anyway, the fireplace had been taken out a long time ago, and there was a radiator there, and above it the previous people had put some shelving. We got rid of the shelving, and I decided instead of putting new shelving in, that I was going to create this kind of rainbow arch using these wooden crates that I picked up at a local craft shop here in the UK called Hobbycraft. They're about 30 centimetres by 40 centimetres by 18 centimetres deep. I'm sorry, I can't do the maths on the conversion for that right now. It's something like 12 inches by 16 inches by, I think, 6 or something inches deep, 8 inches deep maybe. And yeah, so what I ended up doing was I taped up all of the outside of the box, including all the gaps that you can see, so the paint wouldn't go on the outside of the box as much as possible. And then I primed the inside and the edges with gesso, which is just an acrylic primer. And yeah, so I just did one layer of this white gesso as like a primer, and then I did 2 layers of acrylic paint on top in whatever colour I was doing. And based on the calculations that I'd done, we needed about 11 boxes in total. So I picked out 11 colours in kind of a rainbowish theme. This is the first colour layer going on. I didn't film me painting every single box because once you see one box being painted, it's pretty self-explanatory, it's all the same stuff. But this was the very first box that I was painting, so I was still figuring out the best way to do it, and by the end I'd kind of had a real good flow going with it. I ended up painting these over the course of about 2-ish weeks, I think, on and off. Not every single day, but I would do a couple, 2 or 3 boxes on the day, and then have a couple of days break, and then do another few boxes, and kind of fitting it in around my work and stuff like that. But yeah, I think they turned out pretty well. There are definitely some areas that will need some touching up, but I wasn't too worried about that at this particular point. I knew that once they were going to be installed, that we will probably end up using some screws in a few places and things like that. So I thought once they're in situ, then I will go ahead and do some touch-ups to them at some point, you know, soon after they're installed. So actually at the time of recording this, we have gone ahead and set up Layla's room, so that video will be the next one coming. And I haven't had a chance yet, but I will be going in at some point and doing some touch-ups to the paintwork. And here I'm applying the second coat now to the box. These boxes turned out pretty well. Like I said, I didn't get super fussy about making sure I sanded between each layer, etc. But these boxes were going to serve more as decorative shelving rather than actual sort of practical shelving, as it were. It's mostly going to hold things like picture frames and other decorative items, and only the bottom couple of shelves, or boxes rather, are going to have things in it that Layla's going to want to like interact with per se, like take down, play with, put back kind of stuff. So the upper shelves are mostly just going to be for decorative purposes rather than actual active use, as it were. So yeah, now I'm just taking off the tape once all the layers have dried, and I'm removing some like larger clumps of paint from the corners and the edges where they sort of had collected. And you can see there I've got the tape against that top edge because I was trying wherever possible to avoid paint going onto the sides of the box. There are a few places where my roller slipped and I did end up getting paint on the sides, but I think now that we've set it up, managed to keep most of those smudges of paint that are on the outside hidden, either against the wall or under another box or something like that. So that worked out pretty well. Anyway, now we are moving on to the rainbow macrame project that I made for Layla. I watched a few videos on YouTube on how to do this, but it was fairly simple. I used the measurements in one of the videos for measuring out the different lengths of the thicker cord that I was using to wrap the yarn around. Turns out that those measurements weren't 100% accurate, and so some of the outer arches of the rainbow didn't turn out the right size, but that didn't actually end up mattering in the end, which was a good thing. So I bought this yarn. It's 100% cotton fingering weight yarn from Love Crafts here in the UK, and I bought 2 skeins of each of 7 colours for the rainbow and a few skeins of a grey. And yeah, I ended up using this yarn for several projects, which turned out to be great, and I still have loads of it left over. Here I am struggling to untangle this knot, which I will soon give up on and just cut out because it was a lot of faffing around. Yeah, it's just like, I got a lot of it undone in fairness, but it got to a point where it wasn't possible anymore to undo it, so it just went snip. Anyway, so yeah, I don't do much in the way of macrame. Actually, this is the only macrame type of project that I've done, so I didn't want to go out and spend a lot of money buying all the different types of different colours of cord and things like that, because that can get quite expensive. And at least with the yarn, if I have leftover yarn, I'll be able to do stuff with it, whereas I'm not really into doing lots of macrame and stuff, so if I had tons of leftover cord, I'm not sure what I would actually do with that. So I just bought the length of rope that I needed to be able to do this project, and used yarn for the wrapping. And then I just do a little slip knot at the end, and here you see I've done all the other colours. I didn't see there being much point in actually recording me doing each of them because it's all about the same, and you can see here what I mean about the outer arches not being quite long enough. So I went ahead and sort of did a little dab of hot glue on the end where the knots were, just to hold those in place, and then I decided to use the hot glue as well to glue the arches together rather than sewing them together, which is what most of the tutorials that I saw showed, mainly because I don't currently actually have my sewing supplies, they are with my mum. And also because I'm slightly impatient, and if hot glue will work, then hot glue it is. And it worked out fine. This hot glue gun's really good, and the glue is very sturdy, so I had no issues with using it. Sorry, I'm a little bit sniffly. My allergies have been going absolutely haywire recently with all the housework and stuff we've been having done. There's so much dust and stuff flying around, and even with all the cleaning and everything that we're doing, this is all dust is really triggering my allergies at the moment, which is not fun. So I'm trying to keep the sniffles to a minimum. Anyway, you can see here I'm just gluing all of the different arches together, adding one after another, keep going. It's pretty self-explanatory again. I was just being very careful that the glue wasn't transferring through to the front of the rainbow. I only wanted it to show, obviously I only wanted it on the back. And yeah, I actually even considered, I was more than willing actually to go ahead and buy one of these macrame rainbow wall hanging things from Etsy. And I went online and I searched for ages. There might be more options if you're abroad in the US or Europe, but I was looking specifically for UK based companies because shipping, and also didn't want to have to deal with customs and stuff. So and there were lots of options, in fairness, there were lots of options, but they all either didn't have the right colour combination, like maybe one or two of the colours in the rainbow weren't quite what I was looking for, or the size wasn't the size I wanted. I wanted a nice substantial size rainbow, not like a teeny tiny one. And yeah, or they weren't quite the right finished style that I wanted, and you'll see I basically end up adding some pom-poms as like the cloud at the bottom of the rainbow, and none of them were offering that sort of option, which I could have added myself, I guess, but I was just worried that if I ordered one on Etsy that it would come and it just wouldn't be quite the right colours that I wanted. And this way, and here you can see I've got the pom-poms made up, and you see I used the smaller of the two clover, the light green one that I had, clover pom-pom maker. I find it's really handy actually, whizzing up a pom-pom there. But yeah, I was just worried about the colours not being quite right if I ordered one online. And this way, actually having made my own rainbow and having bought the yarn, I ended up using this same yarn and colour combinations in other projects. So a lot of her decorative pieces in her room kind of colour coordinate as well. They use the same sort of tones and shades of these particular rainbow colours. So that actually ended up working out really nicely as well, which was pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. And then here we go, making up all the pom-poms, and then this is the bit that I hate the most about pom-poms, is trimming everything up, because it doesn't sound too bad to begin with, but then it's just like there's always more bits to be trimmed, like you never quite get it all, and it's really frustrating. Anyway, we got through it. It took a while. You see the videos like really speeding through that, but yeah, got there in the end with the 6 pom-poms, and it works out really well, and you'll see once I lay it out on the rainbow and glue it down that it really does a good job of covering up the fact that the rainbow itself isn't quite the right, the arches aren't quite the right length. The pom-poms do a great job of covering that up, which yeah, it turns out that was a good idea to add the pom-poms, especially for someone like me who's new to this whole macrame thing. And even though this isn't like a traditional macrame project with tons of like the macrame knots and stuff that you do, I guess when you search for it on YouTube, it still technically comes up as a under macrame. So if you are interested in doing something like this yourself, and maybe this video is just a little bit too fast for you to see in more detail what I'm doing, there are lots of YouTube tutorials on how to do these. I think I just searched for rainbow macrame hanging or rainbow macrame, and these were some of the videos that came up. So here I just sort of laid out where I wanted the pom-poms to go, and then dabbing on the hot glue to stick them on, making sure there's plenty of glue to hold on to the yarn, and yeah, just getting it all on there. I didn't worry about the longer ends from where I tied off the pom-poms. Those will trim after everything's glued on. And yeah, this was a really, really fun project. I also made a little loop out of the red yarn to attach to the top, which you'll see me glue on in a second. And yeah, this piece actually ended up being a little bit too heavy for any of the things that I had to hang this on the wall. So it's currently actually hanging off one of her doorknobs on her wardrobe, which is fine for now. At some point I might get a hook or something a little bit stronger to be able to hold it onto her wall properly. Okay, so next up I am creating a sort of pennant wall hanging type thing for Layla's room, and I thought this would be really fun to use as a place for her to clip all her hair ties, her hair clips to, her bows and stuff. So what I'm doing here is I'm dividing up the dowel into 7 sections, seven sections with a little bit open at either end, so I know exactly how much of each colour to put onto the dowel to make sure I have even sized sections. So there you can see I'm doing the red one. I think I ended up using, I can't remember how many pieces of red yarn. I think it was like, I don't know, I'm not even going to guess because I really have no idea. But I sort of just measured out a length against my table and kind of kept it consistent for all of them as much as possible. And then at the end I trim it all up, which we'll see in a second. So there's the red one done. And just like magic, here we go. They're all done. If only it was that fast in real life. Okay, so since it's actually quite hard to cut these into a straight line without it going a bit wobbly, I decided to purposely cut it at a diagonal angle. That way if it's not 100% perfect, it's kind of more intentional that way. And you can see here there's a few strands that kind of got away. I just used the edge of a ruler to get as close to a straight line as possible, and then did some like little trimming up after the fact. It's still not 100% perfect, but it's fine, it does the job. And I used a bit of the grey yarn to create a like, what do you call it, a thing to hang it from, a hanger. Oh, I don't know, words not working today. So I just trimmed the ends down a little bit, not entirely all the way, and then I think I dabbed on a bit of hot glue to secure the knots at the back, and there we go. And then I trim off the ends right down to where the glue is. I also end up using a toothpick a few times to kind of move the glue around while it's still hot and wet and malleable, just to make sure it's covering the areas I want it to cover. And there we go, there's the rainbow pennant. Alright, so now I got Layla involved in doing some of the painting for some of the decorative pieces for her room. I bought this little paper mache unicorn head wall hanging thing from Hobbycraft again. I was in there picking up some more crates and I spotted this and I was like, oh, Layla will love that. And so I set her up with some acrylic paints on the floor in my office, put down some cardboard and let her have at it, essentially. And she had a great time with this. I think I'm gonna leave you with some music for the rest of this section and I'll catch up with you in a bit. Okay, so you'll have just seen some of the other decorative bits that we did in the last couple of clips. Now we're moving on to the final DIY project, and I did this literally the morning before we started getting her room decorated. It was the last thing I wanted to make. So what I've done is I've drawn out these cloud shapes onto some, in fact this is watercolour paper, but just any sort of thick sort of cardstock type of paper. And cutting them out, and you saw that I'd grabbed some fibre there, so hopefully none of you spinners out there are gonna come at me for this next bit, but I decided to make some fluffy fibery clouds for Layla. And yeah, I have lots of like bare fibre. I think I had some faux cashmere here, I had some not so great quality merino that was sent to me as like a sample when I got my spinning wheel, and I think there was some carded Corriedale mixed in as well, so there's a few spots where you might spot me picking out some vegetable matter. So I kind of just essentially pulled off staple lengths of each of the fibres and then fluffed it up by hand to kind of mix it up and get them nice and fluffy, and then grabbed a clump and like shaped it into a bit of a ball and then glue it down onto the cloud, as you can see me doing here. And then just kind of made sure, put down plenty of glue and tried to cover as much as possible with each of these little balls while still having that 3D sort of cloud effect. And it turned out so cute and so fluffy, and I actually absolutely love how these have turned out. Like, it's probably not the neatest thing that I could have, like, way that I could have done this, but it was probably the quickest and easiest way of doing it. So here I am floofing up all this fibre, getting it ready for the next two clouds. Like I said, hopefully none of you spinners out there will hate me for this. I was doing this and I was like, oh no, this could go one of two ways with people. Some people will either think this is a great idea and others might be like, that's sacrilegious. Why did you do that? So hopefully, like I said, hopefully no one hates me after this. But hey, I was happy with how it turned out and Layla absolutely loved it in the end. I kept this a complete surprise from her. A lot of the other DIY projects she saw me making, or was with me when I was doing them, or participated in them. So this is the first one that was like a complete surprise for her, the only one that was really a complete surprise for her. So I was really happy with how I was able to pull that bit off. And yeah, so actually this whole DIY, this rainbow cloud DIY thing that I'm doing now took about 2.5 hours to make. So it was fairly time consuming, but the clouds part was fairly quick. It's the next bit that took a bit more time. But so yeah, this is the last little cloud all done. And then whilst these were cooling down and setting, the glue was setting, I moved on to doing the colourful quote unquote raindrops. So again, grabbed my bag of colourful rainbow yarn, which never seems to end. There's like a ridiculous amount of rainbow yarn in that bag still remaining. And I spend far too long figuring out how many of each colour need to go with each cloud in order to have an even number of raindrops for each one. Spent way more time figuring that one out than I really should have, as you can see me here scribbling down on scraps of paper. Anyway, I think I finally figured it out, and then that was it. I went to grab I have this plastic tray thing that's part of one of my painting palettes, and I just used that as like a template, I guess, for whatchamacallit, making these tassels. That was it. I didn't actually explain what I was doing. I'm making tassels, and I'm treating the tassels as like the raindrops coming from the cloud. So you'll see a bit more at the end here. I'm just making the first one and trimming up the ends, tying it off, and I used the grey as the top part of the tassel to where it hangs from, and then use the same colour yarn to wrap the little head of the tassel, I guess. So here I'm making up a couple more of these red ones. So I didn't have an even number of each colour because I needed to have an even number spread over the whole set of clouds, as it were, and it just didn't work out with 7 colours and 3 clouds to have it perfectly even. So I think some colours I had 3 tassels of, and other colours I only had 2 tassels of, but in the end I think there were 18 tassels in total for this project. Like I said, it took me a lot longer to figure this one out than it really ought to have, but we got there in the end. And because I was using the same like plastic tray as like the template for each tassel, it didn't actually need that much trimming at the end to make sure they were all the right length. They were mostly the right length, they just had to be a bit trimmed up to get into a straight line. And boom, there we go. They're all done now. If only it was that easy. Like I said, it did take me like 2.5 hours to do all of this. And then came the fun part, to arrange the tassels against the clouds and glue them down. Now, you may or may not be able to see the mistake here. I certainly didn't notice it until it was too late. And that was that I glued these down in the reverse rainbow order. Ignore the fact that I have white paint splodged on the side of my arm. I had been touching up some paint work around the house and managed to get myself covered in paint, as you do. So here again, I'm using the hot glue and the toothpick to spread out the hot glue as needed. And there we go, all done. Well, I say all done. One cloud, almost done. So as I was finishing this up, I was thinking about how I was going to attach this to the wall, and realised I did attach most things to Layla's wall using command strips, you know, like those Velcro type removable strips that you can use to attach stuff to walls. There's only a few things that we had to like securely screw onto her wall, like a mirror and a shelf, but the other things, like mostly decorative stuff, I was using these command strips to avoid damaging the walls as much as possible. And so I realised that actually this was quite an uneven surface at the back. Those command strips wouldn't work very well, which is why I then at the end of each cloud glue on this strip of paper or strip of card, which I can then put the command strips on, and it will have a more even surface to glue against, or to hold against, as it were, to make it nice and secure. Okay, so we are coming up to the end of this video now, so I just wanted to say, if you've enjoyed this little home improvement, home renovation series I've been doing on the channel, I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you have, please give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you think. Which was your favourite DIY project out of all of these in this video? Let me know down below, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. This rainbow cloud thing I think has to have been my favourite one, just because it was something I was mulling over for quite a while, and then it came out so well, and I'm so happy with how it turned out, and Layla loves it. So yeah, that's it for this video. Stay tuned. Layla's room reno is coming next. Alright, bye!